Look, I didn't do anything wrong, just told the truth too directly. That night I laughed and admitted I'd tested his friends before choosing him. I thought it was funny, proof I'd always wanted him most. But now he's not laughing, and the lawyer he hired says I'll be lucky to keep even my name on the house. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. It started on a Friday night that wasn't supposed to be memorable at all. Just a small get-together, Daniel's friends, a few drinks, easy laughter. I'd been the one to suggest hosting. I liked being the one who made the evenings happen, the organizer, the woman everyone said was too confident, but still invited anyway. I wanted them to see that I was fun, sharp, someone who could make any dull conversation interesting. I'd had a good week at work and felt that little buzz of power that comes when everyone's watching and waiting for your next clever comment. Daniel sat at the end of the table, comfortable as always, quiet in the middle of his own group of friends. They'd known each other since school. Evan, Mark, Theo, and James, all steady, loyal types, men who didn't gossip much, the kind that made Daniel seem grounded, the kind I used to say were boring but safe. The wine flowed faster than the food. Someone joked about past relationships, and I laughed too loud. It felt good to be the one holding everyone's attention. I don't even remember how the question came up. Maybe it was Evan teasing Daniel about being the first one to marry. But I remember my voice, light and sharp, cutting through their laughter. Well, it's not like I didn't give the rest of you a fair chance first. The room went quiet in an instant. I smiled wider, trying to make it sound like a joke. I added, "You all failed the test, that's all. Daniel passed." They stared. Even Evan froze mid-sip. Daniel's eyes lifted slowly from his plate to my face, confusion turning into something harder. I laughed again, trying to soften it. "Relax. I mean it in a fun way. It's a compliment, really." He was the one who made it serious. No one laughed. Mark cleared his throat, muttered something about needing to make an early night of it. Theo followed. Evan didn't say a word, just left his drink half-finished and went outside to smoke. Daniel didn't move for a while. After everyone left, I tried to act like nothing happened. I started loading dishes, humming to fill the silence. Daniel didn't help. He just stood near the table, arms crossed. Finally, he said quietly, "Was that supposed to be funny?" I turned around, keeping my tone light. "Oh, come on, don't act like it's news. You know we met through them." "That's not the same as saying you—" He stopped, shaking his head. "You humiliated me in front of my friends." I put the plate down too hard. I told the truth. "You want me to lie just to make you comfortable?" He said nothing. That was his way. Silence instead of shouting. Somehow, that made me angrier. I wanted a reaction, anything but that calm. I told him he was being sensitive, that men who were confident didn't need to cling to pride over a harmless joke. He went to the couch without another word. I slept alone that night, convinced he'd come back when he realized I was right. The next morning, his mother called. Marjorie always had perfect timing, the kind that made you wonder if someone else tipped her off. She said she heard about the dinner and wanted to have coffee. I didn't want to go, but I knew avoiding her would only make it worse. When I got to her house, she was already waiting at the kitchen table, coffee poured, the air sharp with tension. She didn't waste time. "Did you really tell Daniel's friends that you'd been with all of them before him?" I rolled my eyes. "I didn't say it like that. It was a joke, Marjorie." Her stare didn't waver. "A joke about testing loyalty." "It was light-hearted," I said. "You should have seen how serious they all looked. It was ridiculous." "Daniel didn't think it was ridiculous." I sighed. "Daniel takes everything personally. He'll get over it." She leaned back slowly, like she was studying me. "I used to think you were just outspoken. Now I'm starting to think you enjoy breaking things that make you feel small." I stood up, forcing a laugh. You sound like you're reading from a therapy pamphlet. Marjorie didn't stop me when I left. At home, Daniel was gone. His car wasn't in the driveway. I called him, no answer. Texted, nothing. By evening, he finally came back, said he needed air. I tried to lighten the mood again, told him he was overreacting and that his friends probably forgot it already. He just looked at me and said, "You made me a joke among them." I told him that was his insecurity talking. If they were real friends, they wouldn't let one comment ruin how they see you. He said, "You don't get it. You didn't embarrass me because of what you said. You embarrassed me because you meant it." That stung more than I expected, though I pretended not to care. I told him he was twisting things. He went upstairs and closed the door. Later that night, I opened my phone to a message from Evan. "You shouldn't have said that, Clara." My chest tightened. I typed back, "You shouldn't have told him anything." Then deleted it. Then wrote again, "Why are you all acting like I started a war?" It was a joke. He didn't reply. I went to bed angry, but beneath the anger was something else. A flicker of unease I refused to name. The next day, Nina called. My sister always had perfect radar for drama. She said she'd heard what happened from Daniel's cousin, who apparently got the story through Marjorie. "It's blowing up, Clara," she said. "You should do damage control." "Damage control," I repeated. "It's gossip, not a crime." Nina hesitated. "You know how people are here. Everyone's saying you tested all of them. That's not a small thing to laugh about." I rolled my eyes. "I'm not going to live my life apologizing for jokes." "Maybe just apologize to him then," she said gently. I hung up before answering. That evening, Daniel came home late again. He didn't eat dinner, just sat in the living room watching TV without sound. I tried to sit next to him, asked if we could move on. He said nothing, eyes fixed ahead. I wanted to scream. I told him silence was crueler than shouting. He still didn't look at me. When I went upstairs, I glanced at his phone on the table. The screen lit up with a new message. From Evan. I didn't open it, but I didn't need to. I already knew they were talking about me. About what I'd said. About how I'd ruined everything. Still, I told myself it was all fine. I'd fix it when the timing felt right. But somewhere deep down, I knew I'd crossed a line that words alone wouldn't cover. And the worst part? I still believed I had done nothing wrong. For the next few days, the air in the house stayed thick with silence. Daniel left early for work, came home late, and barely said a word. I told myself it was temporary, that he was just sulking. Men did that. They shut down until you pulled them back out. I told myself he'd realize he was overreacting soon. But that Wednesday, I saw him having coffee with Evan, through the cafe window. I was driving home from work when I spotted them sitting together. Daniel leaned forward, serious. Evan kept nodding. My stomach twisted. I parked half a block away just to watch. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was the fear of losing control of the story. When Daniel came home that night, I asked where he'd been. He said he'd met Evan for lunch. I asked what about. He said it wasn't my business. I laughed, sharp and defensive. "Oh, so now I can't even ask what you're talking about with your friends?" He didn't rise to it. He just said, "You already know." That answer stuck in my chest. I said, "If you're looking for proof that I did something wrong, good luck finding it." He just said quietly, "I already have all the proof I need," and walked away. That night, I sat on the couch replaying that line again and again. Proof. What proof could he have? There was nothing real between me and any of them. A few harmless, flirty conversations years ago, maybe a touch that lingered too long, but nothing that counted. I told myself he was twisting it to make himself the victim. The next morning, I decided to fix things in my own way. Not by apologizing, but by taking back control. I sent a message to all of them, Evan, Mark, Theo, and James, inviting them over for another dinner that weekend. I said I wanted to clear the air. Evan replied almost immediately, "Bad idea, Clara." Don't make this worse. Mark sent a thumbs up emoji. Theo didn't answer. James just said, sure, if Daniel's okay with it. When I showed Daniel the group chat, I said brightly, see, everyone's fine. We'll all laugh about it and move on. He looked at the screen, then at me. You don't get it, do you? Get what? That this isn't about your reputation, it's about trust. I told him trust went both ways, that he was making a big deal out of nothing. He said quietly, then maybe there's nothing left to make a deal about. The dinner never happened. One by one, they cancelled. First, James said he had to work, then Theo claimed a family event. Evan didn't even respond. On the day itself, only Mark showed up, looking uncomfortable from the moment he stepped inside. We made awkward small talk until he said, Clara, maybe let this cool off. Everyone's on edge. I smiled tightly. They're on edge because they're guilty. They don't want to admit they all flirted back. Mark shook his head. That's not how we remember it. His words stung more than I let on. I said he was just protecting Daniel because it was easier than facing his own part in it. He sighed and said, You're not helping yourself. When he left, I poured a drink and called Nina. She picked up, sounding tired. Clara, you've got to stop trying to spin this. I'm not spinning anything, I said. I'm correcting a false picture. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You're losing people, one by one. That irritated me. You sound like Mom. Maybe because she's right about you for once, she said softly. You can't keep mocking people and calling it honesty. I hung up before she could say more. The next day, Daniel didn't come home after work. He texted that he was staying at his mother's for the night. My first thought wasn't sadness, it was anger. I called him, and when he didn't answer, I left a voicemail saying, You're acting childish. If you think ignoring me fixes anything, it doesn't. You're only making yourself look weak. He didn't call back. At work, I could feel eyes on me. 2 of my colleagues, people I used to gossip with, avoided me. Someone had told them, clearly. I overheard one of them whispering near the break room, saying, She actually told her husband she tried his friends first. They laughed. The sound made my stomach twist. That afternoon, I posted a long message on my social media. A half apology, half justification. I wrote that people needed to stop judging women for being honest about their pasts, that confidence wasn't shameful. I tagged no one, but I knew everyone would see it. Within hours, comments started. Some supportive, most not. Evan's girlfriend even commented, saying, Confidence is good, but hurting people for fun isn't. I deleted it immediately. When Daniel came home that evening, he didn't even look at me. He went straight upstairs. I followed him, asking if he'd seen my post. He said yes. I asked what he thought. He said, It's amazing how you can turn cruelty into self-expression. That stopped me cold. Cruelty? You think I was cruel? He turned, finally meeting my eyes. You enjoyed watching them squirm that night, and you enjoyed watching me pretend it didn't hurt. I opened my mouth to argue, but he was already walking away. The next morning, I found a letter on the kitchen counter. It was folded neatly, no envelope. Inside was a single sentence. I've scheduled an appointment with a family lawyer next week. I froze. My first thought wasn't that he was serious. It was that he was bluffing to scare me. I called Nina again. She sounded alarmed when I told her. He's not bluffing, Clara. You've embarrassed him in front of everyone he knows. He's done. No, I said firmly. He wouldn't dare do that to me. But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore. That night, Evan sent me another message. You should stop posting. He's collecting everything. My pulse quickened. Collecting, I typed back, but before I could press send, I saw the 3 dots disappear. He'd gone offline. I stared at the screen until the battery died. When Daniel came home the next evening, he was composed, calm in a way that scared me more than any argument could. He said, I'll be out of town for the weekend. You can tell people whatever story you want. I'm done explaining myself. I wanted to shout, to make him stay, to twist things back to my version of control. But something in his tone stopped me. He was already gone in every way that mattered. That night, I sat in the dark living room, scrolling through the messages I'd sent to all his friends. Every flirty joke, every test I'd ever thought was harmless. It hit me how much proof there really was, even if it wasn't what I meant. And for the first time, I started to realize he might not be bluffing after all. The following week felt like a blur, made of whispers and glances I couldn't control. At work, people talked in half sentences around me. At home, the silence had grown into something thick, heavy, and unbearable. Every noise, the hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, the faint creak of the stairs, reminded me that Daniel wasn't speaking to me anymore. He'd moved into the guest room, his side of the closet nearly empty. I told myself it was just a phase. I told myself he was too proud to admit he still cared. But when the letter from the lawyer came, official seal, formal tone, I felt my breath catch. It wasn't just a bluff anymore. The letter said a preliminary consultation had been held regarding domestic dissolution and custodial considerations. Legal words that didn't sound like our life, but still described it. I held it for a long time before setting it on the counter. I called him at work. He didn't answer. I called again, then texted, "We need to talk." He replied hours later with a single line, "You said everything already, Clara." That night, when he came home, I tried to corner him in the kitchen. "So that's it? You're just giving up?" He said quietly, "I'm not giving up. I'm getting out." I followed him down the hall, angry. "You're throwing away years because of one joke." He turned, calm as ever. "No, I'm walking away from years of disrespect you call honesty." The words landed like a slap. I told him he was rewriting history, turning himself into the hero. He said nothing. He just walked into the guest room and locked the door. For the next few days, he left early and came back late. When I asked where he was going, he said he was handling things. I demanded to know what that meant, but he ignored me. The control I'd always felt, the upper hand I used to have in every argument, was gone. He wasn't reacting anymore. He was planning. The first real proof came that Thursday. I came home from work and found him at the dining table, papers spread out, receipts, bank statements, even old photos. His mother was there too, sorting through a folder. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Marjorie looked up, her expression unreadable. "We're organizing documents for the lawyer." "For the lawyer," I said. "You can't just do this without—" Daniel interrupted, not looking at me. "Everything will go through the proper channels. You'll have your chance to respond." I laughed in disbelief. "Respond? Like this is some court case?" "It is," he said simply. Marjorie gathered a few papers, avoiding my eyes. "He's not doing anything wrong, Clara. He's protecting himself." I felt heat rush to my face. "You mean protecting himself from me? What do you think I am?" Neither of them answered. Marjorie quietly stood and left. Daniel didn't look up. I wanted to grab the papers, tear them apart, shout something that would shake him out of that terrifying calm. But I didn't. I just went upstairs, shaking. Later that night, I found myself scrolling through social media again. My own posts, his friends' updates, even Evan's page. He'd stopped posting entirely. That worried me more than anything. I called him, and to my surprise, he picked up. "What are you doing, Evan?" I demanded. "Why are you helping him?" He sighed heavily. "Because he deserves better." Better than me? Better than being humiliated in front of everyone he knows. I felt my throat tighten. "You were part of it. You don't get to play the hero now." He went quiet for a long moment, then said, "You need to stop, Clara. He's collecting everything. Texts, screenshots, your posts. You're making it worse." I wanted to scream at him, but the fear under his tone froze me. "Collecting," I repeated. He hung up without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went through my phone, deleting messages. every flirty text, every inside joke that might look worse than it was. But it felt pointless. The internet never really forgets. By the weekend, Daniel had packed most of his clothes. I watched him carry boxes to his car in silence. Finally, I said, "So you're just leaving?" He nodded. "For now." "Where are you even going?" "My mother's." I crossed my arms. "Running back to her. That's mature." He didn't bite. He just said, "At least she still respects people." I followed him down the driveway. "You think you're innocent in this? You think this makes you the good guy?" He turned then, eyes steady. "I don't need to be the good guy. I just need to be done." He got in the car and drove off. I stood there, stunned, watching the taillights disappear. For 2 days, I didn't hear from him. Then, on Monday morning, I got a call from my boss. She said there had been a complaint about unprofessional behavior online tied to my recent posts. Apparently, someone had sent screenshots, probably one of Daniel's friends. I tried to explain, but she said it was best for everyone if I took a few days off. I sat in my car in the parking lot, trembling. It wasn't supposed to go this far. When I got home, an envelope was waiting on the doorstep. Another letter from the lawyer. Inside was a notice of preliminary mediation. Date, time, and a list of requested documents. Marriage certificates, tax returns, and records of digital communication. I dropped it on the counter and stared at it until the light outside turned orange. That evening, Nina called again. "Clara, I heard from Mum. She said Daniel's lawyer is pushing for custody of Leo." "What?" I said sharply. "He wouldn't dare." "He would," she said softly. "He's got witness statements and messages. Even Evan's cooperating." I felt dizzy. "He's turning everyone against me." "No," she said. "You did that yourself." I hung up on her. That night, I went into Leo's room. His drawings were still on the wall, our family holding hands, smiling under a sun. I sat on his bed, tracing the lines of the crayon figures. For the first time, I felt something colder than anger. Fear. Fear that I'd built this mess out of words I couldn't take back. When Daniel came by the next morning to pick up more things, I tried one last time. "You can't really go through with this," I said. "You'll ruin both of us." He looked at me, calm as ever. "You already did that, Clara. I'm just cleaning up what's left." He left without another word, the sound of the front door closing echoing through the empty house. And as I stood there in the silence he left behind, I realized he didn't need to yell or threaten or fight. He'd already won, by simply refusing to play anymore. The mediation day came faster than I expected. I'd spent the week convincing myself it would be manageable, that Daniel would soften once we were face to face, that the lawyers were just a formality. I dressed carefully that morning, a pressed blouse and soft makeup, something that looked composed but vulnerable. I practiced phrases in my head. I never meant to hurt anyone. I just made a mistake. I thought if I looked reasonable, they'd all finally see that I wasn't the villain in this story. When I arrived, Daniel was already seated in the conference room. His lawyer, a tall, calm woman with grey hair, was flipping through a folder. My lawyer, a younger woman named Jenna, whispered that I should stay quiet unless spoken to. Daniel didn't look up when I walked in. He didn't even greet me, just a nod. That small, polite nothing of a gesture. The mediator began with introductions, the legal talk about mutual resolution. I barely listened. I couldn't take my eyes off Daniel. He looked different, not angry, not sad. Just finished. The first topic was custody. The mediator said Daniel had requested primary custody of Leo with shared visitation. My mouth went dry. I turned to my lawyer. "That's ridiculous," I whispered. "I'm his mother." Daniel's lawyer spoke calmly, explaining that Daniel was citing emotional instability and public humiliation impacting the household environment. Then she passed around printed documents, screenshots. I recognized them instantly, my messages with Evan, my public posts about confidence, even the dinner photo from that night when I'd made the joke. I wanted to speak, to explain context, but the mediator told me to wait. I sat there, cheeks burning, while my life was summarized in bullet points. When it was finally my turn, I said, "Those were harmless. I was joking. You can't punish someone for being honest." Daniel finally looked at me then. "You didn't tell the truth, Clara. You made a spectacle out of it." I felt my voice rise. "I was being open. You're acting like transparency is a crime." He didn't answer. The mediator just nodded, making notes, and suggested a recess. I followed Daniel into the hallway. "You don't actually want to take Leo from me," I said quietly. He turned, his expression controlled. "No, I want him to live somewhere safe from chaos." "Chaos?" I scoffed, "because I said something you didn't like?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Because you never think before you speak, because everything has to orbit around how you feel in the moment." I wanted to argue, but he walked away before I could. Back inside, his lawyer presented another surprise. A short video clip. Someone had recorded that dinner night, me laughing, the way I leaned forward and said I'd tested his friends. Their uncomfortable faces, Daniel's silence. I felt sick watching it. I didn't know who had filmed it, but I knew how it looked. When it ended, the room was silent. I said softly, "You're really doing this to me, using one moment to erase everything good." Daniel said, "I'm not erasing anything. I'm remembering clearly." The mediator suggested we move to financial discussions. My lawyer tried to interject, but it didn't matter. Every topic, savings, property, future expenses, turned into a quiet record of how he'd already moved on. He'd planned this, calmly and precisely, while I'd been spinning in circles trying to control the story. Halfway through, I noticed a folder labeled Character Statements. Inside were written notes. One from Marjorie, one from Evan. I felt heat rise to my face again. Evan's statement was short but devastating. I witnessed repeated attempts by Mrs. Vey to provoke and humiliate her husband under the guise of honesty. It became uncomfortable for everyone. I couldn't stop myself. "You asked your friends to testify against me?" Daniel said simply, "I asked them to tell the truth." I turned to the mediator. "This is bias. They're all on his side." The mediator said, "Mrs. Vey, these are first-hand accounts. You'll have the opportunity to submit your own." I sat back, crossing my arms, forcing myself not to cry. I wanted to shout that it was unfair, that none of them understood what it was like to be the woman constantly blamed for being too loud, too confident, too much. During the lunch break, I sat in the restroom stall scrolling through my phone. The comments under my old posts had multiplied. Strangers arguing, some calling me brave, most calling me cruel. Someone had even shared a screenshot of the video. It had spread beyond our circle. My hands shook as I scrolled. When we returned, the mediator asked if I'd like to propose a counteroffer for custody. I forced a smile. "Joint custody, equal, I'm his mother." Daniel's lawyer nodded but said gently, "Your online conduct and witness statements make that unlikely." I laughed, a brittle, humorless sound. "So I lose everything because I said the wrong thing at dinner?" Daniel finally spoke again, voice even. "You don't lose everything, Clara. You keep the house. I keep our son's peace." The words hit harder than any insult. The meeting ended quietly. Papers gathered, signatures postponed for review. As everyone stood, I said under my breath, "You're doing this to punish me." Daniel paused, looking at me one last time before leaving. "No, I'm doing it to stop you from punishing everyone else." When the door closed, I sank into my chair, trembling. Jenna, my lawyer, said softly, "You need to stop speaking online. It's hurting your case." I nodded, numb. That evening, I went home to an empty house. Leo was still at Marjorie's. I poured a drink, then another, staring at my reflection in the glass door. For years, I'd thought being bold made me powerful. But now, every word I'd ever said had been turned into evidence, proof of my arrogance. Nina came by later, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "I saw the video," she said quietly. "It's bad, Clara." I shrugged, pretending not to care. "People always twist things." She sat beside me. "They didn't twist anything. You laughed at him in front of everyone he trusted." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't find the words. After she left, I sat in silence until the sun went down. The house felt too big, too clean. I went into Leo's room again, touching the drawings he'd made. Family, smiling, always together. I wondered how you explain to a child that you lost everything not by mistake, but by pride. The next morning, a new email arrived from Daniel's lawyer. Subject line, "Final custody motion filed." It said they'd be pursuing sole custody, effective immediately. Attached were more documents. Printed screenshots, statements, timestamps, proof of everything I'd once laughed about. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred, realizing this wasn't a fight anymore. It was a conclusion. And the worst part? He didn't need to shout, threaten, or curse. All he had to do was show who I really was. The day of the final hearing began grey and cold, the kind of weather that matched the feeling in my chest. I barely slept the night before, pacing the house and reading old messages I should have deleted. By morning, the silence felt like it was pressing against the walls. The clock said 8:47 when I finally picked up my purse and left. I didn't eat breakfast. I didn't even bother with makeup this time. At the courthouse, everything looked too clean, too official. The polished floors, the steady hum of air conditioning, the smell of paper and coffee. All of it made me feel small. Daniel was already there, standing with his lawyer. He looked calm as always, his shirt pressed, his eyes unreadable. I wondered if he felt anything anymore, or if that calm was all that was left of him. Jenna met me at the entrance, speaking in a low voice. "Remember, keep your tone steady. Don't interrupt. The judge will have already seen the documents." I nodded, though I barely heard her. My heartbeat was louder than her voice. Inside the courtroom, the judge went through the motions, introductions, purpose, the reminder that this was a civil proceeding. It felt like someone narrating the end of a story I'd already ruined. Daniel's lawyer began first, summarizing the case like it was simple arithmetic, evidence of repeated humiliation, written proof of public comments, emotional distress, corroboration from witnesses, video documentation. I wanted to scream that it sounded worse than it was, that context mattered, but no one was looking at me. When it was my turn, Jenna stood and spoke calmly about emotional misunderstanding, about how I had exercised poor judgment under social pressure. She made it sound clinical, as if I'd caught some illness called bad timing. The judge nodded, took notes, and asked if I wanted to speak for myself. I stood, hands trembling. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was trying to be open, to show that we all make mistakes. Everyone twists it like I was cruel, but I wasn't. I loved him. Daniel didn't move. I looked straight at him. "You know I never wanted to hurt you." He finally spoke, voice low but steady. "You didn't hurt me, Clara. You embarrassed me. That's different. Pain fades. Shame sticks." The judge cleared his throat and continued. My eyes blurred as they read the custody decision. Primary granted to Daniel. Visitation under supervision until further review. I heard words like emotional stability and consistent environment, but they didn't sound real. When the session ended, Daniel turned to leave without saying anything. I followed him out, ignoring Jenna's whisper telling me to stop. In the hallway, I said, "You could have fought to fix this. Instead, you buried me." He looked at me then, a quiet sadness in his eyes. "You buried yourself. I just stopped digging beside you." He walked away. Outside, the cold air hit my face like punishment. Marjorie was waiting by the steps. I thought she might gloat, but she didn't. She just said softly, "I hope you learn from this, Clara, for Leo's sake." I wanted to tell her that she didn't understand, that I wasn't the monster they made me out to be. But all that came out was, "You've always wanted me gone." She shook her head. "I wanted you to stop pretending cruelty was confidence." Then she turned and walked away too. I stood on the courthouse steps for a long time, watching them disappear into the parking lot. The wind pulled at my coat, the sky grey and endless. For the first time, I felt the full weight of what I'd done, not just to Daniel, but to myself. When I finally got home, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. It was too still, too silent. I walked through the room slowly. The living room, the kitchen, Leo's room. His bed was made neatly, but the shelves were half empty. Marjorie had already taken most of his things. The drawings on the wall, the ones of the three of us, looked almost cruel now. I touched one and felt tears sting my eyes. There was a letter on the table, Daniel's handwriting, my name written neatly on the front. Inside, it said, "Clara, this isn't revenge, it's protection. I hope one day you understand the difference. Take care of yourself. No anger, no accusation, just that." I read it twice, then 3 more times. It was almost worse than if he'd cursed me. That night, I sat on the couch drinking wine straight from the bottle, the TV flickering with a show I wasn't watching. I kept thinking about every time I'd said, "It was just a joke," every time I'd laughed at his quietness, every time I'd told myself I was teaching him confidence. I'd mistaken his patience for weakness, his silence for surrender. At some point, Nina called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. She asked, "How bad was it?" I said flatly, "It's done." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "He really did it, huh?" "Yes." "You going to fight it?" I let out a small laugh. "With what? My charm? My jokes?" She sighed. "You can still fix things with Leo." I didn't answer. I didn't know if that was true. After we hung up, I sat there until the room went dark. The house creaked as the wind picked up outside. I thought about Daniel somewhere else, maybe tucking Leo into bed, reading him the story I used to read. I wondered if he looked peaceful again, now that I wasn't there to ruin it. I picked up my phone and opened our old photos. There was one from that dinner night. Me laughing, him looking slightly embarrassed, the friends smiling awkwardly. I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. Then I opened my social media and deleted everything. The posts, the comments, the debates. Gone. I thought it would make me feel lighter, but it didn't. The silence after the deletion felt heavier than the noise ever was. Before bed, I stood by the window looking out at the streetlights. For the first time in years, I didn't know who to call, who to argue with, who to prove myself to. There was no audience left, and in that quiet, something inside me finally broke. Not in anger, not in regret, just in understanding. Daniel hadn't taken revenge. He had taken his life back, and I was left with the echo of my own laughter, still ringing in the empty rooms I'd once filled with noise. Weeks passed after the ruling, but time didn't feel real anymore. Every morning I woke up expecting noise. Daniel making coffee, Leo running down the hallway, the hum of normal life. Instead, there was only silence. I tried to fill it with small things, cleaning rooms that didn't need it, scrolling through old photos, pretending I was busy. But everything I touched reminded me of what was gone. The house felt like a museum of mistakes. The laughter I once thought made me powerful now echoed like something cruel. I stopped opening the curtains. I didn't want the neighbors to see me like this. The woman who used to brag. The one who thought she could talk her way out of anything. One afternoon, an envelope arrived in the mail. I thought it might be from Daniel. Maybe some final document or note about Leo. But it wasn't. It was from the court, a schedule for my visitation review. The first time I'd be allowed to see my son again, supervised. The word supervised felt like a knife. That night, I sat on the floor with Leo's old drawings spread around me. Crayon figures, our family, the house, the park. I ran my fingers over his handwriting, the uneven letters, I remembered how Daniel had once said, "He draws what he sees." I used to laugh and say, "Then I hope he never sees us fighting." But now, I wondered what he remembered instead. My voice sharp, his father quiet, the tension that filled our home long before I ever noticed it myself. Nina called again. She asked if I'd talked to Daniel. I said no. She asked if I was ready to apologize. I said I'd already tried, online, in messages, through people. But I hadn't said the words directly to him. Not really, not the kind that mattered. That night I wrote a letter, short, plain, without excuses. "I'm sorry. I was cruel when I thought I was clever. I confused pride for power. You didn't deserve that. I didn't send it. Maybe someday I would. Maybe not." The next morning I went outside for the first time in weeks. The air was cold but clear. I walked past the neighbors' houses, the same ones that used to host barbecues and dinners, where I'd show off my wit, my confidence, my so-called honesty. People glanced my way. Some smiled politely. Most didn't. I kept walking. When I reached the park near our old routine, the one where Daniel used to take Leo to feed ducks, I sat on a bench and watched other families. I imagined Daniel there too, maybe standing near the water, Leo holding his hand. I didn't cry. I just sat there, feeling the truth finally settle. I hadn't lost him because of one joke, or one dinner, or one bad night. I'd lost them both because I thought love could survive constant humiliation. And now, I finally understood what silence really meant. Not punishment, but peace. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.